The great hall of the Galactic Council was silent. Ambassador Sarah Chun stood alone at the center of the massive room, surrounded by floating seats that held representatives from 47 different worlds. Each alien face looked down at her, with expressions that ranged from boredom to outright disgust. "The human request is denied," announced Counselor Vexai, his blue skin rippling with what humans had learned was amusement. The Altarian leader's voice echoed through the chamber. "Your species lacks the technological foundation to properly utilize advanced defensive systems." Sarah kept her face calm, but her hands clenched into fists behind her back. She had spent 3 months traveling to this station at the edge of known space. 3 months while human colonies burned under HFY attacks. 3 months while her people died because they could not defend themselves properly. "Counselor Vexai," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the anger building inside her. "In the past year alone, the HFY swarm has destroyed 17 human settlements. Over 2 million civilians are dead. We are not asking for weapons. We are asking for the defensive shield technology that you freely share with other council members." A sound like grinding metal came from the section where the HFY representative sat. Sarah knew this was their version of laughter. The insect-like creature stood on its 6 legs, its black carapace gleaming under the chamber's lights. "The human speaks of our raids as if they were crimes," clicked Admiral Vorth through his translator. "We take what the weak cannot protect. This is the way of the galaxy. If humans cannot defend their worlds, they do not deserve to keep them." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Sarah felt her heart sink as she saw alien after alien nodding their approval. The Zephyrians, with their crystalline bodies, chimed in harmony. The massive Groken delegate pounded his fist against his chair in support. "The HFY speak truth," said Counselor Thrain, the ancient leader of the hegemony. His wrinkled face showed no emotion as he spoke. "For 10,000 years, this council has operated on a simple principle. The strong protect what they value. The weak lose what they cannot guard. Humanity has been spacefaring for less than 2 centuries. You have shown no great innovations, no remarkable technologies, no unique contributions to galactic civilization." Sarah's jaw tightened. She thought of the messages waiting in her ship's communication array. Desperate pleas from colony worlds begging for help. Military reports showing human ships being torn apart by HFY weapons that could slice through their hulls like paper. "What about our medical advances?" Sarah asked. "Human doctors have found cures for 17 different diseases that plagued other species for centuries." "Medicine," scoffed Vexai. "Any civilized species develops adequate medical technology. This does not make you worthy of military protection. Our agricultural methods have increased food production on 12 worlds by over 300%. Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger. "Farming," clicked Admiral Vorth dismissively. "Even insects know how to grow food." Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. She looked around the chamber at faces that showed no sympathy, no understanding, no willingness to help. These beings saw humanity as nothing more than primitives playing at being civilized. "I see," Sarah said quietly. She straightened her shoulders and looked directly at Counselor Thrain. "Then humanity will have to find another way." "There is no other way," Thrain replied with certainty. "Accept your place in the galaxy, human. Some species are meant to rule, others are meant to serve. A few are meant to disappear entirely. The universe will decide which category your people belong to." Sarah nodded slowly. She walked to the small podium at the center of the chamber and placed her hands on its surface. The room fell silent as she looked up at each representative in turn. "You believe humans are weak," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "You believe we have nothing to offer. You believe we are not worth saving." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You may be right. But I want you all to remember this moment. Remember that when humanity asked for help, you turned us away. Remember that when we begged for the tools to protect our children, you laughed at us." The chamber remained silent. Sarah continued, her voice growing colder with each word. "Remember that you taught us the only law that matters in this galaxy. The strong take what they want, and the weak lose everything they cannot protect." She lifted her chin. "Humanity will remember this lesson. We will remember it very well." Sarah turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the quiet chamber. As she reached the doorway, she stopped and looked back one final time. "When the history of this galaxy is written," she said, "let it show that humanity asked for mercy first." The doors closed behind her with a soft hiss dot in the chamber. Representatives began talking among themselves. Most seemed pleased with the outcome. The HFY delegation was already planning their next raids on human space. None of them noticed the small recording device Sarah had left behind on the podium. 3 days later, Sarah's ship reached the edge of human space. She sent a single encrypted message to coordinates deep in the Kuiper belt of the Sol system. The message contained only 5 words: "Council says no. Begin Phase 1. In the darkness beyond Neptune, something huge began to move. Construction ships that had been drifting silent for months suddenly blazed to life. Massive industrial platforms hidden behind holographic screens started their engines. And deep in the asteroid belt, mining operations that had been quietly working for decades received new orders. The galaxy had made its choice. Now humanity would make theirs. The HFY would learn soon enough that some lessons, once taught, could never be unlearned. 25 years had passed since Ambassador Sarah Chun walked out of the Galactic Council chambers. The galaxy had largely forgotten about humanity during those years. Most alien species assumed the humans had either been wiped out completely, or had retreated so far into their own space that they no longer mattered. The HFY swarm had grown bolder with each passing year. Their raids on human colonies had become routine sport. They would descend on peaceful settlements, take whatever they wanted, and leave the survivors to rebuild or die. The few human distress calls that reached other species were ignored. After all, the Galactic Council had made its position clear decades ago. Captain Zektar of the HFY Third Fleet stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching his forces prepare for what they called harvest runs into human space. His mandibles clicked with satisfaction as he reviewed the latest intelligence reports. "The humans have abandoned another 6 systems this month," reported his intelligence officer. "Their remaining colonies are clustering closer to their home system. They are running out of places to hide." "Excellent," Zektar clicked. "Soon we will have enough slaves and resources to begin the great expansion. The human territories will make perfect breeding grounds for our young." On the bridge's main screen, Zektar could see dozens of HFY ships moving into formation. Each vessel was the size of a human city, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. The humans had nothing that could stand against them. "Sir," called his communications officer, "Admiral Vorth wishes to speak with you." The screen flickered, showing the ancient HFY admiral who had been present at the council meeting 25 years ago. His carapace was now marked with the scars of countless battles. "Zektar," Admiral Vorth's voice buzzed through the translator, "I have received approval for the final harvest. We will end the human problem once and for all." Zektar's excitement made his wings vibrate rapidly. "When do we begin, Admiral?" "In 3 months we will gather every available ship. 1,000 vessels, the largest fleet in HFY history. We will sweep through human space and eliminate every last colony. Then we will move on their home system and finish what we started decades ago." The communication ended, leaving Zektar to savor the thought of such complete victory. The humans had been a minor annoyance for too long. Soon, they would be nothing but a memory far away in the outer reaches of the Sol system, Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the same intelligence reports with very different emotions. She was 73 years old now, her hair completely gray, but her eyes were still sharp and focused. She stood in a control room that would have amazed any alien species if they had known it existed. The room was enormous, stretching nearly 1 kilometer in length. Holographic displays covered every surface, showing construction projects, energy readings, and tactical analyses. But what made the room truly remarkable was what those displays were monitoring. Dr. Vasquez called her assistant, a young man named Marcus Chun. He was Sarah Chun's grandson, though few people knew that connection. The final fusion cores are coming online now. Elena nodded, watching as display after display turned from red to green. Each light represented systems that were larger than most space stations, weapons that could destroy moons, engines that could move mountains, shields that could withstand the explosion of stars. Phase 1 is complete, she announced to the room. Her voice carried across speakers to engineering teams scattered across hundreds of locations. All primary systems are operational. Cheers erupted throughout the massive facility. Engineers who had worked their entire careers on this project celebrated with tears in their eyes. Some of them were the children and grandchildren of people who had died in HFY raids. This moment was what they had been working toward for 25 years, but Elena did not celebrate. She raised her hand for silence, and the room quickly grew quiet. "Listen to me carefully," she said, her voice stern. "Phase 1 is complete, but our work is far from over. We have built something that no species in galactic history has ever attempted. But building it was the easy part. Now we wait." "Wait? For what?" asked Marcus. Elena turned to look at a massive display showing the outer solar system. In the center of the screen was an object that looked like a small planet. It was perfectly spherical, its surface gray and unremarkable. To any casual observer, it would appear to be nothing more than a large asteroid that had somehow achieved perfect roundness. "We wait for them to make their move," Elena said quietly. "We wait for the HFY to show us that they have learned nothing from history. We wait for them to prove that they still believe humans are weak and defenseless." She walked closer to the display, placing her hand on its surface. The image zoomed in, showing details that took her breath away even after all these years. The planet was covered in what looked like natural terrain, but Elena knew better. Every mountain was a weapon emplacement. Every valley was a launch bay. Every crater was a sensor array. "They think we disappeared," Elena continued. "They think we ran away to hide in our corner of space. They have no idea that we have been working. They have no idea that we took their lesson to heart." Marcus joined her at the display. "The lesson?" Elena's eyes hardened. "That the strong take what they want, and the weak lose everything they cannot protect." She turned to face her team. "They taught us that the galaxy respects only strength. So we built strength. We built something so powerful that even they cannot imagine it." A new alert appeared on one of the displays. Elena read it quickly, then smiled for the first time in months. "What is it?" Marcus asked. "Intelligence reports from our agents in HFY space," Elena replied. "Admiral Vorth is gathering the largest fleet in their history, 1,000 ships. They are planning something they call the final harvest." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. "Good," Elena said calmly. "We have been waiting 25 years for them to give us a reason. They are about to provide one." She turned back to the display, showing their artificial planet. "Wake up the others. It is time to begin Phase 2. Across the solar system, similar objects began to stir. Objects that had been drifting silently in the darkness for decades. Objects that the galaxy had never noticed because they looked like natural celestial bodies. The HFY were about to learn that humanity had indeed disappeared from the galaxy. But they had not run away. They had been preparing. Admiral Kefza stood on the command deck of the Kefir flagship, watching his massive fleet approach the Sol system. 1,000 ships stretched out behind him in perfect formation. Each vessel was a monument to Kefir power bristling with weapons that had conquered dozens of worlds. "Admiral," reported his sensor officer, "we are detecting minimal defensive activity around the human home system. A few patrol ships, some orbital platforms around their planet. Nothing that poses any threat to our forces." Kefza's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. After 25 years of raids, the humans had finally given up trying to fight back. This would be easier than he had expected. "Excellent. Begin standard sweep formation. We will destroy their outer defenses first, then move on their home world. I want this to be thorough but quick. The sooner we finish here, the sooner we can claim the entire system for the swarm." The Kefir fleet spread out, each ship taking its assigned position. They had done this hundreds of times before on dozens of different worlds. The humans would fall just like all the others, but as they moved deeper into the system, something caught the attention of Lieutenant Vaketal at the sensor station. "Admiral," he called out hesitantly, "I am detecting an unusual object in the outer system. It appears to be a rogue planetary body." Kefza barely looked up from his tactical display. "A rogue planet? Probably captured by their star's gravity. Ignore it. Focus on military targets. Sir, the object is large, nearly the size of their home world. And it appears to be moving." Now Kefza turned his attention to the sensor readings. The object was indeed massive, but planets did not simply move through space on their own. "Are you certain about the movement?" "Yes, Admiral. It is definitely changing position, very slowly, but it is moving." Kefza studied the readings more carefully. The object was perfectly spherical, which was unusual for a natural planetary body. Most planets were slightly flattened at the poles due to rotation. This one was geometrically perfect. "Run a deep scan," he ordered. "I want to know what we are looking at." The sensor officer's fingers danced across his controls, directing the fleet's most powerful scanners toward the mysterious object. For several minutes, the bridge was quiet except for the humming of equipment. Then Lieutenant Vaketal gasped. His carapace turned a pale green color that indicated shock among his species. "Admiral," he whispered, "the object, it is not natural. The deep scans show artificial structures throughout its interior. Massive power sources. Construction that spans the entire planetary mass." Kefza felt his blood turn cold. "What are you saying?" "Admiral, that is not a planet. It is artificial. It is ... It is a ship." The bridge fell silent. Every Kefir present stared at the sensor readings in disbelief. A ship the size of a planet was impossible. No species in galactic history had ever built anything so large. "You must be mistaken," Kefza said, but his voice lacked conviction. No one could build something that massive. The resources alone would require the output of dozens of systems. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we are receiving a transmission from the object." "From the object?" Kefza's confusion was complete now. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of an elderly human woman. She sat in what appeared to be a command chair, with displays and control panels visible behind her. But what shocked Kefza was the sheer scale of the room she was in. It stretched away behind her like a vast cavern, filled with equipment and personnel. "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez, commander of Terra 1, the woman said calmly. "You are trespassing in human space." Kefza found his voice after a moment of stunned silence. "I am Admiral Kefza of the Kefir swarm. You will surrender immediately, or we will destroy your ... your vessel." Elena smiled, and the expression sent chills through the Kefir admiral. "Admiral, I do not think you understand your situation. You are facing humanity's answer to 25 years of Kefir aggression. You taught us that the galaxy respects only strength. Allow me to show you what human strength looks like." The transmission ended, and immediately the HFY sensors began screaming warnings. The artificial planet was powering up. Energy readings spiked to levels that the instruments could barely measure. "Admiral!" shouted the sensor officer. "The object's power output is increasing exponentially. It is generating more energy than our entire fleet combined." HFY watched in growing horror as the smooth surface of the planet ship began to change. What had appeared to be mountains and valleys were shifting, revealing themselves to be massive weapon emplacements. Gun ports, the size of cities, opened across the sphere's surface. Launch bays larger than HFY capital ships yawned open like hungry mouths. "All ships, evasive maneuvers." HFY ordered, but he knew it was too late. Terra 1 opened fire. The space around the HFY fleet lit up with weapons fire unlike anything they had ever seen. Beams of energy large enough to cut through moons lanced out from the planet ship. Each shot contained more destructive power than the main guns of 10 HFY dreadnoughts. The first wave of fire destroyed 50 ships instantly. The HFY vessels simply ceased to exist, vaporized by energies that turned their armor into superheated plasma. "Return fire!" HFY screamed. "All ships, target that thing and destroy it." The surviving HFY ships turned their weapons on Terra 1, pouring everything they had into the artificial planet. Missiles, energy beams, and plasma charges struck the sphere's surface by the thousands. None of them even scratched the surface. "Admiral," reported the weapons officer, his voice shaking. "Our weapons are having no effect. Their shields are absorbing everything we can throw at them." HFY stared at the tactical display as more of his ships disappeared under Terra 1's relentless barrage. In less than 10 minutes, he had lost nearly half his fleet to a single enemy vessel. But it was not just a vessel, he realized. It was an entire world converted into a weapon of war. The humans had taken a planet and turned it into the ultimate warship. "How is this possible?" he whispered to himself. "How could the humans build such a thing without anyone knowing?" As if in answer to his question, his sensors detected movement throughout the solar system. Other objects that he had dismissed as asteroids and small moons were now revealing themselves to be artificial as well. More planet ships, smaller than Terra 1, but still massive beyond comprehension. The humans had not just built one impossible warship. They had built an entire fleet of them. "Admiral," his communications officer called out desperately. "We are receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Every major power is reporting similar objects appearing in their space. The humans, they are everywhere." HFY felt his legs give out as the full scope of humanity's deception became clear. While the galaxy had ignored them, while the HFY had raided their colonies, the humans had been working. They had been building an armada of planet-sized warships and positioning them throughout known space. For 25 years, the galaxy had been surrounded by human weapons, and no one had noticed. "All ships," HFY whispered into his communicator. "Retreat, full retreat." But as his surviving vessels tried to flee, Terra 1 began to move. The massive sphere accelerated with impossible grace, pursuing the fleeing HFY fleet with the patient inevitability of a natural disaster. The humans had finally shown their strength, and the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral HFY's remaining ships fled through space faster than they had ever traveled before. Behind them, Terra 1 followed like a nightmare made real. The massive planet ship moved through the void with terrifying grace, its weapons tracking the fleeing HFY vessels with deadly precision. "Admiral," gasped his navigation officer, "Terra 1 is gaining on us. How is something that large moving so fast?" HFY stared at his displays in disbelief. His fastest ships were being overtaken by an object the size of a world. The human planet ship was not just keeping up with them, it was catching up. "Sir," "We are receiving distress calls from the Altara system," reported his communications officer. "The Fourth Fleet is under attack by another planet ship. They say it appeared out of nowhere." More reports flooded in from across Kethver space. Human planet ships were emerging from hiding places they had occupied for decades. Asteroids that had been ignored for years suddenly revealed themselves as massive weapons platforms. Dead moons came to life with the fury of human engineering. How many of these things did they build? Kefza whispered. His answer came when Terra 1 opened. Fire again. The planet ship's weapons reached across impossible distances, striking 3 of his escort vessels. The ships simply vanished in bursts of brilliant light. "Admiral, we cannot outrun them," his tactical officer reported. "Their acceleration curve suggests they are using some kind of gravitational manipulation drive. They are bending space itself to move faster." Kefza felt his hope dying. The humans had not just built bigger ships. They had developed completely new technologies. While the galaxy had dismissed them as primitives, they had been advancing beyond anything the established powers could imagine. "Sir, look at this," called the sensor officer. His voice was filled with terror as new readings appeared on his screen. "Terra 1 is changing. The surface is moving." On the main display, Kefza watched in horror as the smooth surface of the planet ship began to shift. What had looked like natural terrain was rearranging itself. Mountains flattened and reformed. Valleys opened to reveal massive launch bays. The entire surface of the artificial world was alive with movement. "They are launching fighters," reported the tactical officer. "Thousands of them, but these were not ordinary fighter craft. Each one was the size of a Kethver cruiser. They poured out of Terra 1 like a swarm of metallic insects, moving in perfect formation toward the fleeing Kethver ships. "Return fire," Kefza ordered desperately. "Target those fighters." His ships opened fire on the approaching human craft, but the results were devastating in ways he had not expected. When Kethver weapons struck the human fighters, they did not simply destroy them. They exploded with the force of antimatter bombs, taking nearby Kethver ships with them. "Admiral," his weapons officer reported with growing panic, "their fighters are equipped with planet-killer warheads. Each one carries enough explosive power to crack a moon." Kefza realized with growing horror that the humans were using weapons as fighter craft that were more powerful than his largest battleships. The scale of human engineering was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. "We need to reach the jump point," he said. "If we can get to hyperspace, maybe we can escape." But as his ships approached the system's edge, space itself seemed to twist. The jump point, which should have allowed them to escape to hyperspace, was being disrupted by some kind of field. "Admiral, Terra 1 is projecting a gravity well," his science officer reported. "They are preventing us from jumping to hyperspace. We are trapped in this system." Kefza watched his fleet being systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to have planned for every possible tactic. The humans had not just built bigger weapons. They had thought of everything. "Sir, we are being hailed by Terra 1, the communications officer announced. "Put it through," Kefza said, knowing he had no choice. Dr. Alana Vasquez appeared on the screen again. Behind her, Kefza could see dozens of human technicians working at control stations that stretched into the distance. The scale of the command center was overwhelming. "Admiral Kefza," Alina said calmly, "your fleet is finished. You have 2 choices. Surrender now or be destroyed completely." "You cannot do this," Kefza replied, though his voice shook. "The Galactic Council will not allow such aggression." Alina smiled coldly. "The same Galactic Council that refused to help us when your species was slaughtering our civilians? The same council that told us we were too weak to deserve protection?" She leaned forward in her chair. "Admiral, the council taught us that the galaxy respects only strength. We are simply demonstrating how well we learned that lesson." Kef's sensors showed more human planet ships appearing throughout his territory. They had been hidden in plain sight for decades, disguised as natural objects. The humans had surrounded Kef for space without anyone noticing. "How long?" he asked quietly. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the day your people killed the first human civilian," Elena replied. 27 years, 4 months, and 16 days ago. We have been preparing for this moment ever since." The transmission ended, and Kefsa found himself staring at a tactical display that showed the complete destruction of everything he had built. His mighty fleet was reduced to a handful of damaged ships. His territory was occupied by human forces that outgunned him by ratios he could not calculate. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we are receiving surrender terms." Kefza read the terms in silence. The humans wanted complete withdrawal from all occupied territory. They demanded reparations for every colony destroyed. They required the Kefver to submit to human monitoring of their military forces. But what shocked him most was the final demand. The humans wanted the Kefver to serve as an example to the galaxy. They wanted every species to see what happened when humanity was pushed too far. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked his tactical officer. Kefza looked at his remaining ships, then at the massive form of Terra 1, hanging in space like a mechanical moon. Around him, his bridge crew waited for his decision. These were warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds, who had never known defeat. "Signal all ships," he said quietly. "We surrender." As the Kefver fleet powered down their weapons, Terra 1 began broadcasting a message throughout the galaxy. The transmission reached every world, every station, every ship in known space. The message was simple. Humanity was no longer hiding. They were no longer asking for protection. They had built strength beyond anything the galaxy had ever imagined. And they were ready to use it. The age of Kefver dominance was over. The age of human power had begun, and across the galaxy, other species began to scan their own space more carefully, wondering what other dead objects might actually be human. Weapons waiting to reveal themselves. The hunt for the Kefver was just the beginning. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was different this time. Where once 47 species had looked down at humanity with contempt, now they sat in nervous silence. Emergency sessions had been called 3 times in the past week as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human planet ships had revealed themselves in every major star system. Objects that had been ignored as asteroids or dead moons for decades were now showing their true nature. The galaxy was surrounded by human weapons, and no one had seen it coming. Counselor Vex High, the Altarian leader who had once laughed at human requests for help, now sat pale and shaking in his floating chair. His homeworld was currently being orbited by something the humans called Terra 7, a planet ship that dwarfed his entire space fleet. "The emergency session is now in order," announced Counselor Thrain, though his ancient voice lacked its usual authority. "We are here to discuss the human situation." The massive doors at the chamber's entrance opened, and Ambassador Sarah Chun walked in, but she was no longer the desperate diplomat who had pleaded for help 25 years ago. Now she was 78 years old, her hair white, but her eyes burned with quiet power. Behind her walked a small group of human officers, their faces calm and confident. The chamber fell completely silent as Sarah made her way to the central podium. But this time, she did not stand alone at the bottom looking up at her judges. A new chair had been installed at the same level as the council members, and Sarah took her seat with dignity. "Counselors," Sarah said, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber, "I believe you requested this meeting." Thrain shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Ambassador Chun, the council is concerned about recent human activities. Your species has revealed military capabilities that were not previously known." Sarah smiled. "You mean the same military capabilities we asked you to help us develop 25 years ago? The same defensive technologies you refused to share because you said we were too primitive to use them properly." Murmurs of discomfort rippled through the chamber. Several counselors looked away, unable to meet Sarah's steady gaze. "The council wishes to discuss terms," Vexhai said quickly. "Perhaps we can reach some kind of agreement about the deployment of your ... vessels." "Terms," Sarah repeated. "How interesting. For 25 years, the only terms this council offered humanity were surrender or death. Now that we have shown our strength, suddenly you want to negotiate." She stood up and walked to the center of the chamber. Behind her, the massive wall screen activated, showing a view of space outside the council station. 3 enormous spheres hung in the darkness, their surfaces bristling with weapons that could crack planets. "Those are Terra 1, Terra 5, and Terra 12. Sarah explained calmly. "Each one is fully operational and currently targeting this station. But do not worry. We are not here to destroy you. We are here to establish new rules." The chamber erupted in panicked voices. Several counselors demanded to know how many more planet ships humanity possessed. Others called for immediate military action. But their voices died when Sarah raised her hand. "Silence," she said, and her single word carried more authority than all their shouting. "You will listen to humanity's terms." Thrain leaned forward. In his chair. "What do you want?" "First," Sarah said, "complete autonomy for all human space. No alien vessel may enter human territory without permission. No alien government may make demands of human colonies." "That is reasonable," Thrain said. Quickly. "Second, reparations. Every species that participated in raids against human colonies, or that refused to help when we requested aid, will pay compensation. The amount will be determined by human accountants based on lives lost and property destroyed." Vexhai's skin rippled with distress. "The cost would bankrupt half the galaxy." "Then you should have considered that before you let our people die," Sarah replied coldly. "Third, humanity will take a permanent seat on this council, with full veto power over any decision that affects galactic policy." The chamber exploded in protests. Representatives shouted that such authority was unprecedented, that no single species should have such power. Sarah waited for the noise to die down. "Are you finished?" she asked. "Because I have not told you the most important term yet." The chamber fell silent again. "Fourth and final. Earth will remain in its current position in the Sol system. Our homeworld will continue to orbit our star as it always has." Confused looks passed between the counselors. Several species exchanged glances, wondering why humanity would make such an obvious statement. "I do not understand," Thrain said. "Why would we demand that your homeworld be moved?" Sarah's smile was cold and terrible. "Because, Counselor Thrain, Earth is not just our homeworld, it was our prototype." The words hit the chamber like a physical blow. Representatives stared at Sarah in growing horror as the implications became clear. "You mean ... double quotes," Vexhai whispered. "I mean that every human child is born on a warship," Sarah said. "Every human city sits on a weapon platform capable of destroying solar systems. Our entire species lives aboard the most powerful vessel ever constructed." She gestured to the screen, which now showed an image of Earth from space. But now the counselors could see what they had missed for centuries. The continents were not natural landmasses. They were massive weapon emplacements. The oceans were cooling systems for engines that could move worlds. The entire planet was a machine of war disguised as a garden world. "For 50,000 years, humanity has been mobile," Sarah continued. "Earth can travel between stars. It can defend itself against any threat. And if necessary, it can leave this galaxy entirely and find a new home among distant stars." The chamber was dead silent. The most powerful beings in the galaxy sat frozen as they realized they had been living next to the ultimate weapon their entire lives. "So here are your choices," Sarah said. Accept our terms and live in peace with humanity as equals, or reject them and discover what happens when 5 billion humans decide they no longer want to share this galaxy with species that tried to exterminate them. Thrain looked around the chamber at his fellow counselors. He saw fear in every face, panic in every expression. The old order was dead. The age when aliens could dismiss humanity as primitive and weak was over. "The Council accepts your terms," he said quietly. Sarah nodded. "Excellent. Human representatives will arrive within the week to begin implementing the new arrangements." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and counselors?" "Thank you. For what?" Thrain asked. "For teaching us that the galaxy respects only strength. It was the most valuable lesson we ever learned." Sarah walked out of the chamber, leaving behind a council that would never again make the mistake of underestimating humanity. Outside the station, Terra 1 and its sister ships began their journey back to human space. They had delivered their message. The galaxy would remember. And in the depths of space, other planet ships continued their silent watch, ensuring that humanity would never again have to ask for help. The age of human strength had begun.